terrifying.
Hi, welcome back to Rogue M4. Man, what a month. We ended up moving in a different state, and then of course all the rain and weather and stuff. Today, you know, after Scott over at Kentucky Ballistic had his incident where he was severely injured, and he made it, thank goodness. And some people have been saying, you know, since I was a range safety officer, my background had some fire, and I was a medic, and I did advanced medical stuff and you know, wound packing and trauma. One of the guys wanted me to speak about first aid at the range, and so I'm gonna pull out some tips, tricks. I don't want to say tricks, but I want to put out some safety tips while you're at the range and what to do in case you get severely injured at the range. The first thing I want to cover is location. So, you know, I'm a safety guy, which a lot of you guys know. And when you get to sites and stuff, the first thing you need to look at is like wind socks and stuff and kind of understand how things are laid out. It's not that much different at a shooting range. If you're at a shooting range, you need to be thinking, where are you? So today we're at the Fox Valley shooting range, and it's not real far out, but then again, medical services are pretty far out. If you're at a shooting range, or maybe you go to one often, you need to think about what's the emergency response time for medical, because a lot of people think, well, I can get to the hospital faster than what the ambulance can get to me. Well, maybe, but here's what you got to remember. An ambulance has everything on board that a hospital is going to probably do, with an exception of surgery and some stuff like that. So you have to make sure that you understand, if the ambulance is 15 minutes away and it may take you, 20 minutes to get to the hospital, if you're driving like a maniac, you may be putting yourself or your passenger or the person you're trying to take to the hospital in more danger. So make sure that you understand where you're at and what is this, what's the time frame that's going to happen if something happens at the range. The other thing I want to talk about is, okay, so if something happens at the range, you get shot or somebody else gets shot, let's talk about self first aid. So the first thing you got to remember is you got to control the bleeding. Somehow control the bleeding. Now listen, this is not a training video. This is just some of the information I'm sharing with you that's worked over the last 25 years that I've done some medical stuff. So, control the bleeding, okay? If it's yourself, just direct pressure. You don't need to know, you don't have to have any kind of degree to understand that. Direct pressure on the wound and stop the bleeding. Never take the dressing back off to look to see how it's doing. If it's like a gunshot wound or something like that, you're going to put direct pressure on it, you're going to wrap it up and keep it tight. If it bleeds through the dressing that you put on, you pack more on. If you don't have a first aid kit, which you should, if you do not have a first aid kit in your vehicle, you probably should get one. A t-shirt, at this point it really doesn't matter. You need to pile something on there. Get a t-shirt, an old rag, hopefully it doesn't have oil and some other stuff on it. But get a rag or get something on there, wrap it in duct tape, whatever it takes to try to hold and keep pressure on the wound. Second step, okay, you controlled the bleeding. The second thing you need to do is control your emotions. If you're all fired up, you're hyperventilating, you're getting excited, you need to slow your breathing down. One of the things that Scott did do right is that he controlled his breathing and he tried to stay calm, because if you're hyperventilating and you're scared and stuff, well, a couple things may happen. First off, if you pass out, who's going to control the bleeding? That's not going to help. So slow your breathing down. The second thing is, slowing your breathing down lowers your heart rate. Lower the heart rate, the less bleeding. So make sure that you do that, okay? Calm down. Okay, so you call 911, what's the first thing they're going to ask you? What is your emergency? I had an accidental shooting at the Fox Range, and I shot myself in the leg. I don't think I can drive myself into town, or maybe meet the ambulance halfway. That could be another helpful hint. My gun's secure and stuff. She's gonna ask, she or he, the dispatcher's gonna ask you, what is your location? If you don't know your location, it makes it a little bit harder. So if you ever worked with a dispatcher, you understand that they really want to know, like, what's the address. Now, maybe I don't have an address here, but I can at least give the coordinates. On the phone, if you're on maps or something like that, a lot of times it'll give you longitude and latitude. You should know this stuff. If something happens and you need help, you know what? There's actually a spot over here a helicopter can land. You need to know what's going on, and if you go to the same range, maybe you kind of know ahead of time of what's going on. So location is really important. Okay, so number 3 or 4, I don't remember at this point, but the thing that happens with some people depends on how much blood loss it is. If it went into the femoral artery, maybe it went through the neck like Scott. He put direct pressure on it, kinked it over, remained calm. They knew that the ambulance was going to be a while, and they actually drove and met the ambulance, if I remember correctly. But you got to make sure that, first, control the bleeding. Second, remain calm, lower your breathing, remain calm, slow the bleeding down. What's your location? Where are you at? How long is it going to take for the ambulance to get there, or you to meet the ambulance, or maybe you drive directly to the hospital? A lot of that stuff's really important. But the other thing, it's an underlying issue that it happens to some people. It's really unpredictable. But when people go into shock, some people think, oh, you go into shock because you're scared. That's not the same thing we're talking about. If you have you lose a lot of blood, you go into shock. Okay, and so a lot of things happen. Your heart will increase because it's trying to keep up with the blood loss, and then it turns around and makes it worse because then it pushes out more blood. So somebody going into shock could be a bad thing. Time is not your friend. You got to act decisively and make sure that you know what you're doing. Okay, so I want to talk about if somebody else is the one that accidentally gets shot. Okay, I don't want to go into a lot of details. I'm not going to talk about wound packing. I'm not going to talk about elevation. I'm not going to talk about a lot of that stuff. I just want to talk about some of the basics. If somebody else, if you're up there shooting and you hear somebody else get shot, scene safety is the biggest thing. Make sure, cease fire, cease fire. Everybody clear their weapons. We got to make sure that the scene is safe before we do anything else. The second thing is you're going to want to try to help the person. Only help the person what you have been trained to do. Do not do something more than you don't know, okay? Now, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to help somebody because I don't want to get sued. If you act responsibly and just kind of do what most people would do, then the Good Samaritan law is going to protect you, okay? But here's the catch on how to help somebody. Do you have gloves in your first aid kit? You should. If you have gloves, you want to protect yourself, okay? Because you don't know what that person has. And whatever that person has, you don't want it. So you already got your safety glasses on. You're going to put some gloves on. But here's the deal. If they're still conscious and breathing, have them help themselves. Give them the gauze pad. Give them something that you're going to use to help them control the bleeding. Hand that to them. Say, okay, here, take this. Now push down really hard, and then I'll get a gauze roll or tape or something, and we'll just tape it up, okay? But here's the other thing, is you don't know how people are going to react. Some people act differently. But if you treat them like a dog, and I know that sounds funny, but if you treat them like a dog, you're better off. Sit, stay. If you get them to sit down, then if they pass out, they're not going to get hurt as bad if they fall down on the ground. But if you get them to sit down and get them to calm down, use a calm voice, make sure the scene's safe, ask them if you can make sure that their firearm is secure, and make sure that they remain calm. And then you can give them supplies. Now, if it looks like they're real nervous, they're hyperventilating, they don't know what they're doing, ask them if you can help, okay? You cannot force somebody to go to the hospital if they say, no, I don't want help. They may not want law enforcement to come and talk to them about why they shot themselves in the leg. So sit, stay, put on some gloves. I'm not going to get into bloodborne pathogens and all that other stuff. But whatever they have inside them, you don't want. So make sure that you protect yourself. So if you're at a range and something happens, unfortunately, to somebody else, Scene safety. You got to make sure everybody's safe, make sure the firearms are clear, and make sure that everybody, and give people something to do. Be like, hey, you got a cell phone? Good. Call 911 and go down the road and meet the ambulance. Show them where we're at. Go to the nearest intersection and then call 911 there and tell them that you're there waiting. Give somebody something to do. Get another person. Okay, everybody's firearms should be cleared. Could you go by and check everybody and ask them politely, are you sure that your firearm's secure? Is it unloaded? Is it put away? Let's no more shooting. Let's make sure everybody's, the scene is safe. You got to call the property owner. Somebody does, right? Somebody's got to dial 911 anyways, but whoever's controlling the range, you got to make sure that you tell them, especially if it's a private range. They need to know. Okay, so you help this guy. He shot himself in the leg. You got him stay. You got him to sit down. Here, take this gauze pad. Put it on there. Hold down real tight. Let's get it wrapped up. But let's just say, oh, he passes out. Okay? I know it sounds silly, but if you're like, hey, can I help you? If he does not answer or is unable to answer, the implied consent says, yes, a normal person would want help, so then you could actually render first aid. Remember, only do stuff that you have been trained to do, but you could just put gauze right on the wound and just hold it there and wait for help to arrive. So the guy's still conscious, he's still moaning, he's upset, he's pissed off because he did something stupid, shot himself in the leg. You got stuff on there, he's holding direct pressure, you get it wrapped up with the gauze. Somebody needs to make a decision. Do we wait for an ambulance? Do we put him inside your vehicle, let him bleed all over the place, and then drive down the road? Now, granted, if somebody's life depends on it, I really don't care if somebody bleeds all over my vehicle. I'll pressure wash it out or whatever it takes. But if you're taking somebody, whoever's in the vehicle needs to remain in contact via phone with 911 so they can get the ambulance to meet you. Because if you think the ambulance service is in that city, they actually may be called to a different city on a mutual aid helping somebody else. So they may be coming from a different direction. So make sure that you remain in contact with 911 while you're transporting somebody. So transport's a big thing. Who makes a decision on a helicopter? Well, that's going to be 911. Different cities, counties, states, and stuff, they have different requirements. Maybe like in Scott's thing, he got shot in the neck, he was bleeding out pretty quick. Maybe if he was unable to move, maybe the person that was with him may have said, look, this guy's been shot in the neck, he's bleeding out really bad, I got direct pressure on it, he's not going to make it to the hospital. Is there a way that you can send a helicopter? We have a spot, a perfect spot where they can land and stuff. Please send. You gotta remain calm and try to get that information out there as quickly as possible. Dispatch does a great job, and sometimes when you're talking real fast and things are going on, you think they're too slow. Trust me, they're typing really fast. They're on the phone. Somebody's usually next to them on another headset. They're calling other people out. There is stuff that's going on. They're not delaying you any way, shape, or form. The best thing to do is make sure that you give them all the information that you need. Okay, so I want to talk about one other thing. So complacency at the range. Complacency, what's that mean? That means that you've been doing this a long time and you kind of got relaxed and you're quick drawn and you're pretty good. I'm not talking about training and getting your muscle memory. I'm just talking about somebody who goes out and they get kind of complacent about shooting their weapon. I don't know, you had a dry fire and your muscle reaction is to clear it real quick and keep going. And some of you guys been trained that if you have a dry fire, is that you give it a couple of seconds to see if maybe the primer finally gets stripped off and sends your bullet down the range. You got to be careful, but if you get complacent, unfortunately, sometimes that's what happens. Inexperienced people, okay, stuff can happen. In Scott's situation, he had a gun malfunction. He's an expert, well, I don't know if he considers himself an expert. I think he's an expert gun person. And, you know, he just had a malfunction of his weapon and it almost killed him. So there's a lot of different stuff that comes in, but I do want to point out complacency, because I've seen it before, is that people go out, they go out all the time. They're okay on safety, and it only takes one little thing. Maybe you had a failure to feed or something like that, and they kind of like, hit the gun, or they try to do something and accidentally discharge and shoot somebody else or shoots themselves. Okay. The other thing is training younger people. You need to make sure that you really stay like really close to them to make sure that they don't accidentally discharge up in the air, sideways. There was that case with the automatic weapon with the young lady. That's a tough one. I'll digress on that one. There was some mistakes made, I feel, but anyways, it cost the range officer his life. But stuff can happen at the range. So I'll wrap it up on Rogue M4. I want to say thank you for coming by. Hit the like button, share this video, subscribe. Especially on this July 4th weekend, I want everybody to make sure that they're careful. And I don't know what else to say. This is an important topic. Share it with people. It's some basic stuff. It is not training. It is basic stuff that you need to know in case something does happen at the gun range or wherever you're at. So anyways, thanks again for coming by Rogue M4, and I'll catch you next time.